What? Suddenly, my husband splashed beer on me, exclaiming, "What's with that attitude? You're just a parasite living off me. If you have a complaint, then get a divorce and leave. Someone like you is just in the way." Somehow, he produced a divorce paper already filled out with his name and threw it at me. Divorce. Under normal circumstances, one would panic, but my feelings were different. Rather, I had been longing for these words. All right. I accepted far more readily than I believed possible. Huh? My husband was taken aback by my calm acceptance. Ignoring my surprised husband, I calmly began to prepare to leave the house. However, he seemed to think I wouldn't really leave, and while he laughed at my preparations, that laughter would only last until today. He's about to learn what it means for me to be gone. By then, his smug smile will turn into an expression of utter misery. My name is Emma. I'm a 43-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Ryan in a quiet residential neighborhood. Ryan and I started dating about 10 years ago, introduced by a mutual friend. From dating to marriage, it took about 2 years. Looking back, I wonder why I decided to marry Ryan. It's a mystery. He was so quiet initially, responding to my attempts at conversation with brief yes or okay answers, making it honestly boring to be around him, and I thought we would break up soon. But before I knew it, we were married. Well, all of that was Ryan's fault for what he said. "I will make you happy. I promise to make you happy. You won't have to suffer, trust me," he proposed, sounding like something out of a drama. The moment I heard it, I wondered if he was deluded about himself. But Ryan's face was so serious, I couldn't help but laugh. "I didn't expect to hear something like that." "And your answer is?" "Yes, I'd be happy to." And so, we became husband and wife. After getting married, we moved into the house my father used to live in. My father had been talking about returning to his hometown to work for a while, and in the course of those discussions, he frequently suggested, "Why don't you live here?" With our marriage, the timing aligned, and thinking of the future and the convenience, we decided to live here. I believed we would have a happy married life together. "Here you go," my husband said, throwing an envelope at me as he returned from work. It was white one. "Thanks." "It's not thanks. It's thank you very much." "Thank you very much." With that, Ryan seemed satisfied and went to change into his casual clothes. Opening the envelope, it contained $600. "This isn't enough," I muttered to myself. The envelope thrown at me by my husband contained $600 for our monthly living expenses. Since getting married, the living allowance he gave me was just $600 a month. Electric bills, gas, water bills, plus groceries and everything else. Fortunately, not having to pay rent does help a bit. I've told my husband countless times that this isn't enough to live on, but every time, the response I get from him is awful. "Huh? You should be grateful to even get $600. I'm busting my back every day, working long hours and enduring stress from my bosses. And you're telling me to give you more because it's not enough? For a mere housewife like you? It's always like this." He claims he's having a hard time, working hard every day to support the house, so I shouldn't nag. It always happens. Yes, I get where he's coming from. But that's a separate issue. Trying to reason with him only sours his mood and makes the atmosphere at home terrible. In the end, I cave, and it's as if nothing happened. The shortfall in the living expenses, I cover by dipping into my savings from when I was working. This has been going on since we got married. Where did all those promises from his proposal go? My dissatisfaction with my husband, who seems oblivious to any happiness, just keeps piling up, while he continues to live as he pleases. As if he were the king of his own little country. "Hey, beer." "Yes, oh, sorry. We're out of beer." "Huh? What do you mean there's no beer? I told you before to always keep it stocked, didn't I?" "Sorry, I was so busy with house chores, I couldn't go shopping today." Despite explaining my reasons, It's as if my words don't even reach his ears. Don't give me excuses. You're a stay-at-home wife, aren't you? Then household chores are your job. That includes shopping. The only thing that can soothe me after a hard day's work is a beer. And you ruined that. You destroyed my moment of bliss. Once it gets to this point, anything I say is futile. All I can do is listen to his rant. Then, watching for a moment, I say, I'll go buy it right now. Hurry up. My precious time is ticking away while we're talking. Dressed in my house clothes, I dash to the nearby supermarket to buy beer. I ran back home with the beer. By the time I arrive, I'm out of breath, with sweat dripping down my forehead. I'm back, here's your beer. My husband, lying on the couch and yawning, snatches the beer from me. Then, sitting up, he takes a sip. This is it. Nothing beats beer after a long day. Glad you like it. You look tired, and you're sweating. You smell a bit, too. Go take a shower. As if it's my fault I ended up like this. His thoughtless words hit me hard, both irritating and shocking me. Really, he only thinks about himself. A month has passed. My husband is still only concerned with himself, not caring at all about me or the house. His absolute dominance is almost impressive at this point. You're not going to see me off to work. I'm in the middle of laundry and can't stop right now. I don't need excuses. Don't make me say this so early in the morning. Sorry. With a click of his tongue, my husband heads off to work. I watch him leave until he's out of sight, then return inside the house. The moment I close the door, I let out a deep sigh. How long do I have to keep living like this? Regret for marrying him and negative feelings about my future life surged through me. Even doing my usual chores feels impossible today. I zone out while looking at the garden. Having a day like this once in a while might be nice. I tell myself, almost as an excuse, that I've worked hard enough up until now. Then, the cell phone I had placed nearby starts ringing. It's my husband calling. I debate whether to answer it or not, almost hoping he'll give up during my hesitation. But the call from my husband doesn't stop. I sigh deeply once more. And then, deciding to face whatever it is, I answer the phone. Hello? Why don't you answer right away? How many times do I have to call? I'm sorry, I couldn't pick up right now because my hands were full. Well, whatever. What's for dinner tonight? I'm surprised. He's never called to ask what's for dinner before. What's this about? I'm still thinking, but maybe beef stew, it's been a while. Huh? What? His cryptic behavior is troubling me. What's going on? My colleague said he's going to eat steak after work today. And then, he asked what's for dinner at my place today. What do you think? What do you mean, what do I think? Don't you think it's strange? My coworker's eating fancy steak while I'm stuck with stew. How come I, his senior, have to eat cheaper food than my colleague? His dissatisfaction is clear from his tone. He's envious of his coworker getting to eat something as nice as high-quality meat. Meanwhile, he's at home eating stew. Clearly, he wants to eat something even better than steak. He wants something that would make his coworker jealous. He wants to be thought of as amazing. You know we can't afford that kind of luxury, right? If you really want it, you'll have to figure it out yourself. Indeed, we don't have the means to eat such fine foods. Of course, if he's willing to pay for it, that's a different story. But that's unlikely to happen with him. It's really pathetic. Don't you care at all? That I'm falling behind someone like my colleague? Don't you, as my wife, feel anything about this? But what can I say? We simply can't afford it. He doesn't seem to understand that at all. If it were possible, I would do it. But as I said, we don't have the means for that, do we? Especially when you give me so little for the household expenses. I couldn't help but complain. Immediately, he retorts sharply. What? Do you even understand how hard I'm working to earn money? And there you are, just living off of me, daring to complain. If you have complaints, why don't you manage the household chores better? Other housewives are perfect at managing their chores, not you. You're the only one who complains to the breadwinner. I didn't say that much. I'm just asking for enough to cover our monthly expenses. That's what's annoying. Who do you think you are? If you're going to complain that much, why don't you work and earn some money yourself? His anger explodes. At this point, there's nothing I can do but apologize. I'm sorry. I've been too demanding. This usually smooths things over quickly. But this time was different. You think you can just apologize and everything will be fine? You think I'll just forgive you? No one's going to forgive that. The anger I've accumulated over the years won't be settled with just your apologies. His reaction was unexpected. His anger had been significant until then. It was all over the difference between having high-end meat or stew. There's no need to get that angry. It's fine. Talking to you is just a waste of time. I won't be coming home tonight. Do whatever you want. See ya. Wait! The call was disconnected. I never thought it would come to this. The next day, my husband didn't return home. Was it really that terrible for him? Just because of one meal's content, to show such anger? I pondered if I was at fault and considered apologizing to my husband, but each time I thought, am I really to blame? After all, it all started with his unreasonable demands, not understanding the household matters. Each time I questioned myself, I could feel my heart growing heavier. Still, as a wife, I had no choice but to support my husband and keep telling myself that. About a week later, my husband came back. I've been away for a while, but this place is covered in dust. Did you even clean? This is my castle, you know? I can't understand how you could leave it dirty like this. I did clean, but I've been feeling a bit under the weather recently. Maybe I couldn't do as much as I wanted to. Despite everything, I found myself wanting to rely on him. I didn't do anything specific. Just a few kind words would have been enough. However, the words that came out of his mouth were far from kind. Get the dinner ready. Are you going to leave your tired husband who's been working all this time unattended? Couldn't become a good wife in a week, huh? In the end, you're still the same useless wife, aren't you? After a week of not knowing where he was or what he was doing, to come back and immediately hurl insults at me. Hoping for his kindness was futile. So, this is how it's going to be. In the next moment, I felt a sense of lightness I had never experienced before. This was new to me. As I was trying to understand what was happening, hey! Are you listening? Get the dinner ready. And don't forget the beer, he lashed out again. But this time, something in me had snapped, and I responded to my angry husband with a nonchalant attitude. Seeing this, he suddenly stood up, went to the fridge himself, and took out a cold can of beer. And then... What? Suddenly, he doused me with beer. What's with that attitude? You're just a parasite living off me. If you have a problem, then let's get a divorce and you can get out. Someone like you is just in the way. Out of nowhere, he threw a divorce paper with his signature already filled out at me. Divorce. Under normal circumstances, one would panic, but my feelings were different. I had actually longed for these words. All right. I accepted it more readily than I could believe. Huh? My husband was taken aback by my calm acceptance. Ignoring him, I calmly began to prepare to leave the house. However, he seemed to think I wouldn't really leave, and laughed at my preparations, but that would only last until today. He was about to learn what it meant for me to be gone. By then, his smug smile would turn into a face of utter misery. 3 days later, I returned to my father's house. During that time, my ex-husband called me multiple times, but since we were divorced, I naturally ignored them. Even after such a clear decision to divorce, I couldn't understand why my ex-husband would still call. The day I was told to leave and get out. When I was carrying my bags outside, waiting for a taxi, my ex-husband must have never thought I would actually go. Now, putting on such an act is pointless. My decision to divorce won't change. If you insist, I won't reconsider the divorce, though. Reconsidering? As if he had the right to say that. While all this was happening, the taxi arrived. The driver helped me with my luggage, and I got into the taxi. It seems that was when my ex-husband finally realized this wasn't a joke, as he frantically tried to stop the taxi as it began to drive away, but it was too late. Leaving my ex-husband standing there, the taxi drove off, and he could only watch in a daze. Even now, when I recall the sight of my ex-husband at that moment, I can't help but feel a sense of schadenfreude. After all the things he did to me, it's only natural. Emma, I'm going out for a bit, so I'm leaving the house in your care. Take care. Life with my father is incomparably more comfortable than when I was living with my ex-husband. While my father is at work, I take care of the household chores. No more being accused of just sitting around doing nothing. I can't help but savor the joy of a life without stress. Then, I received a message on my phone. It was from my ex-husband. He probably thought emailing would be effective since I wasn't answering his calls. Like I'd fall for that. I thought and left the email unattended, moving on to preparing dinner. After all, there's no need for me to interact with him anymore. However, the messages from my ex-husband didn't stop. What's more, he even started calling again. That's just like him. Probably, the continuous ignoring hurt his pride too much to bear. Though I intended to keep ignoring him, the relentless calls and the barrage of messages became too much of a hassle, and I finally answered. How many times do you think I've tried to reach you? And you've ignored every single one. You know you're supposed to respond immediately to my calls, no matter what. That applied when we were living together. Now that we're divorced and living separately, that no longer holds any weight. Besides, I'm in the middle of preparing dinner right now, so could you not bother me? With a tone more defiant than before, my ex-husband's anger was palpable even through the phone. What's with that attitude? Don't think you can treat me like this and just get away with it. Always so domineering and threatening, my ex-husband was. I've had enough of this. Goodbye, then. What? Hey, wait. I hung up the phone. He continued to call many times after that, but I ignored all his attempts. I blocked his number, and that was the end of it. I returned to my interrupted dinner preparations, and about an hour later passed. I was almost done. That's when it happened. The doorbell rang. I went to the door, expecting a guest, only to find my ex-husband standing there. So, you were here after all. You've made a huge mess, you know. Let's go now. Unbelievably, he had left work early and sped here in his car. The intensity of his obsession made me step back in fear. Quick, come on. He tried to drag me out forcefully, grabbing my arm. Stop it. Shut up. If you don't listen, I'll have to take measures. As he raised his hand to strike, I resisted with all my might. The struggle continued at the doorstep, attracting the attention of neighbors who gathered around, watching us with curious eyes. To avoid attracting more attention, let's go inside and talk. However, strangely, my ex-husband refused to enter. Despite my insistence, he absolutely refused to come in. It was odd. Upon closer inspection, my ex-husband seemed to have a fearful look in his eyes. Could it be? I thought, just when a car horn sounded from behind. It appeared the crowd gathered in front of our house was blocking the way, making it impassable. However, this horn sounded familiar to me. Wait, that sound is. Then, the car that had been honking parked in front of the house. The door opened, and out stepped my father. Seeing my father, my ex-husband instantly let go of my arm, his previously bold demeanor disappearing as he quietly looked down. My father addressed the frightened ex-husband in a calm and gentle tone. Ryan, it's been quite a long time, hasn't it? I'm glad to see you're doing well. It's been a long time. You look well too. Standing in front of my father, my ex-husband froze, hardly moving. So, what brings you here? I hope you're not here to take my daughter back, are you? Oh, no, that's not. Fumbling for words, my ex-husband began to visibly shake. What's got you so frightened? I haven't said anything strange, have I? I just mentioned how you threw beer on my precious daughter, called her a parasite, and then slapped a divorce paper on her and kicked her out of the house. Now, I'm curious what you could possibly want with her now. My father said, his voice carrying a hint of menace. Feeling the weight of my father's presence, my ex-husband started to back away. But my father didn't let up. Well? Aren't you going to say anything? What's the reason for your visit? Then my ex-husband looked at me and said, I was tricked by Emma. That's why I kept calling her. But Emma ignored all of it, so I came here today to have a proper conversation. Tricked? In what way? It's about the house. That house was supposed to become mine, but then this happened. This happened. That incident was the reason behind my ex-husband's persistent calls and messages. That was actually a small act of resistance on my part. Yours? When did anyone ever say that? Sorry, but I've never said anything like that, and neither did my father. What? Are you kidding me? Didn't your father say I could live in that house when we got married? I haven't forgotten. To think someone could be so deluded. It was especially enough to claim such a thing in front of their father-in-law. You're way off. Dad only said it might be good for you to live there. Right, Dad? That's correct. I may have said you could live there, but I never said it was yours to have. Then, at least do something about them. Them, the reason he had been incessantly contacting me, and the house my father had allowed us to live in belonged to a friend of his. A friend? That intimidating-looking guy? He might look tough, but he's actually very kind once you get to know him. Tom has been a friend of my dad's for years, helping him start the company where my dad is the president. Tom has been a longtime friend of my father, and together they founded the company. My father serves as the president of this company, while Tom supports him as the vice president. You're kidding! Your father's the CEO? Why didn't you say anything sooner? Sorry, it slipped my mind with all the moving and other stuff going on. Dad was also quite busy back then, weren't you? Yes, at that time, we had a major deal going on, and things were hectic. I stayed here, and Tom handled things over there. He really helped me a lot. My father's company, involved in construction, has grown to the point where it receives requests from all over America. The client was based here, and Dad had to travel back and forth every day for the deal. It became too hard, so he moved back here for easier access to the deals, leaving Tom to manage things there. Then, that house is... As I've said before, it's not yours. The house was given to us under the condition we manage it. If Tom is coming back, that means you have to leave. Upon hearing the truth, my ex-husband's face turned pale, and he bit his hand in shock. No way! I told my boss and my colleagues that my house is a high-rise condo. That it was mine. Now what? That's something you did on your own. I have nothing to do with it. You'll have to figure it out yourself. My ex-husband had misunderstood that he had been given the house by my father. His self-serving interpretation of the situation had led to this pitiful outcome. How pity. It was then that his phone rang. Glancing at the screen, my ex-husband screamed and threw the phone away, collapsing onto the sofa and muttering incoherently. And he was collapsing onto the sofa and muttering incoherently. Picking up the phone, I saw the call was from his boss. And there were messages from colleagues as well. We're at your house right now. They're saying this isn't Ryan's house. I'll call you, so please answer. Almost immediately, another call came in. I tried to hand the phone to my ex-husband, but he buried his face in the sofa, mumbling unintelligibly, motionless. Driven by his pride, my ex-husband had always tried to present himself in the best light. He would spend his monthly salary on treating others, trying to convince everyone he was wealthy. This incident exposed his true self, leading to a breakdown of his character. I forcibly took my motionless ex-husband to the car and drove him to meet his colleagues. Seeing him in this state, they were speechless, recognizing a side of him they had never seen before. Perhaps out of fear, they ran away. Afterward, my ex-husband was laid off from his job. The company had deemed there was no hope for his return and decided to let him go. He's now back at his parents' home, recuperating. Despite our divorce, there's still the matter of money he owes me. Currently unable to work, his parents have covered his debts, tearfully apologizing to me. While it left me with mixed feelings, that's just how things are. I hope my ex-husband can repay the kindness his parents have shown him. As for me, here are the documents for the next deal. Thank you. But this makes things difficult. If you keep saying that, we'll fail the next deal. You need to focus. Good grief, I sure have got myself some employee. I've since joined my father's company and am living a fulfilled life, very different from before. Balancing housework and my job is challenging, but it's nothing compared to what I went through before.